The wind never stopped screaming in Alaska. It clawed at the corrugated steel walls of Fort Glacier Medical Outpost, like something alive, something hungry, turning windows into sheets of frosted glass that no one could see through. Snow piled against the outer doors in drifts that buried the lower hinges, transforming the building into an accidental fortress 3 hours from the nearest town, in light years from anything resembling help. Lieutenant Ilara Brennan moved down the hallway with a tray of supplies balanced against her hip. Her steps were careful, measured, the gait of someone still learning the layout after only 3 weeks on station. Light blue scrubs, hair pulled back in a regulation bun, no rank insignia, no visible history, just another rookie nurse sent to a place where nobody wanted to serve. She passed 2 Marines leaning against the wall near the triage station, their conversation dropping to murmurs as she approached. "Evening, Doc," the taller one said, offering a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Cold enough for you?" Ilara gave a small, nervous smile, the kind of smile that said she was still trying to fit in, still uncertain of her place in the pecking order. "Gets colder around 0300, she said softly. The Marine blinked. "Yeah, how would you?" But she was already walking, already gone, disappearing around the corner with that same careful, measured pace that made her look like she was counting steps. No one noticed how she paused at the end of the corridor, not long enough to look suspicious, just long enough to glance at the reinforced window overlooking the frozen runway. No one clocked the way her eyes tracked the snowdrifts outside, measuring height, distance, visibility with the precision of someone doing tactical math in their head. No one noticed her fingers flex once, like she was counting something only she could see. They saw a nurse, a rookie, someone who dropped things and apologized too much. They always did. The hospital existed in that particular kind of quiet that only remote places ever achieve. Not peaceful, just waiting. Heart monitors beeped in steady rhythm. A generator hummed beneath the floor, reliable but strained, like an old man climbing stairs. Outside, visibility dropped below 50 meters as the storm thickened, turning the world into a wall of white static. Inside the command office, the Marine duty officer argued with a radio that refused to cooperate. "Say again, Control, you're breaking up." Static answered, nothing but the crackle of distance and weather. Ilara heard it through 2 walls in a closed door. Her hand tightened slightly on the tray she carried. She kept walking. The supply room was empty when she entered, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead with that particular frequency that sets teeth on edge. She set the tray down and began organizing medications with hands that moved with unconscious efficiency. Alphabetical order, expiration dates rotated, every bottle aligned with military precision. She caught herself doing it and deliberately knocked over a container of gauze pads. They scattered across the counter. She gathered them slowly, clumsily, the way someone unsure of themselves might move. "You always work this late?" The voice came from the doorway, deep, weathered, carrying the authority of 3 decades in uniform. Master Chief Garrison Webb stood with his arms crossed, 61 years old and built like a man who'd spent those years refusing to surrender to age. His hair was iron gray, cut high and tight, and his eyes held the kind of knowing that came from watching people lie for 38 years. Ilara straightened, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "Just restocking, Master Chief. Storm's supposed to get worse. Wanted to make sure we're prepared." Webb stepped into the room, letting the door swing shut behind him. The sound was quieter than it should have been. Deliberate. "You checked the perimeter sensors before you came in tonight?" Ilara's face remained neutral. Perfectly, professionally neutral. "No, Master Chief. Why would I?" "Because I saw you on the security feed 15 minutes ago, standing at the east window, watching the sensor lights." Silence stretched between them. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Ilara picked up the tray again. "I was just looking at the storm." "For 4 minutes? It's a big storm." Webb studied her with eyes that had seen through better liars in harder circumstances. He'd been a Navy corpsman in the First Gulf War, dragging wounded Marines out of burning vehicles in the desert. He'd been in Mogadishu when the Black Hawks went down. He'd spent 2 tours in Iraq watching kids barely old enough to shave try to hide their fear behind bravado. He knew what a soldier looked like when they were pretending not to be one. "I've been doing this a long time, Lieutenant," he said quietly. Ilara's hands stopped moving. Just for a second, just long enough. "I'm not a lieutenant, Master Chief. I'm a nurse." "You move like someone with training, real training. The way you position yourself in a room, always with sight lines to exits. The way your eyes track movement before your head turns. The way you never, ever put your back to a door." Ilara set the tray down carefully. When she looked at him, her face was still neutral, but something harder flickered behind her eyes. "A lot of people have training, Master Chief. Not like yours. You don't know anything about me." Webb nodded slowly. "You're right, I don't. And I'm not going to ask. But if this place needs a soldier tonight—" He paused, letting the weight of that conditional hang in the air. "Don't let pride stop you from being one." He turned and walked out, leaving Ilara alone with the buzzing lights and the knowledge that her cover wasn't as good as she'd hoped. She stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she pulled out her phone and opened the Photos app, scrolled past pictures of medical procedures and training certifications until she found the ones she kept buried at the bottom. 11 faces, children, ages 6 to 11, frozen in a moment before everything ended. She closed the app without looking at it for more than 3 seconds. That was her limit, 3 seconds before the shaking started. Down the hall in the intensive care section that Fort Glacier optimistically called a ward, Dr. Thaddeus Holt was finishing his rounds. At 74, he moved with the careful economy of someone who'd learned to conserve energy decades ago. But his hands were steady, and his mind was sharper than doctors half his age. He'd been a Navy surgeon during the Gulf War, running field hospitals where the wounded came in faster than they could be processed. He'd been in Somalia, in Haiti, in a dozen other places where the phrase medical emergency meant something entirely different than it did stateside. He'd seen a lot in 50 years of practicing medicine. He knew the difference between someone who'd learned trauma care in school and someone who'd learned it with bullets flying overhead. Ilara was helping a corpsman change an IV when Holt approached. "Need you to check the crash cart in OR2, he said. "Inventory's off." It was a simple request, routine, but when Ilara turned to go, Holt followed her into the empty operating room and closed the door behind them. "I was a combat medic before I was a doctor," he said without preamble. "I know how soldiers move. I know how they think, and I know what it looks like when someone's trying very hard not to be what they used to be." Ilara turned to face him fully. "Dr. Holt." "I'm not going to ask you questions you don't want to answer," he continued. "I'm not going to pry into why a woman with your skill set is working as a rookie nurse in the middle of Alaska. That's your business." He moved to the crash cart and pretended to check its contents, giving her space to breathe. "But I will tell you this. This hospital is 3 hours from backup on a good day. Today's not a good day. That storm's going to get worse before it gets better. And if something happens tonight—" He looked up at her. "If something happens, we're going to need every capable person we have, no matter what they used to do." Ilara's jaw tightened. "I'm a nurse now." "I know, and that's good. Nursing's honorable work." He closed the cart and turned to face her fully. "But if you have other skills, don't be ashamed of them. Skills aren't the problem. It's how we use them that matters." She wanted to tell him he was wrong, wanted to explain that some skills came with prices too high to ever pay again, wanted to describe what it felt like to be good at something terrible. Instead, she just nodded and left the room. The rec area was mostly empty at 2000 hours. A few off-duty Marines watched a basketball game on the ancient television, the volume competing with the wind outside. In the corner, away from the others, Corporal Finn Merrick sat cleaning his rifle with the focused intensity of someone using work to avoid thinking. He was 24 but looked younger, with the kind of fresh face that made people underestimate him. His hands moved through the disassembly with practiced ease, but there was something mechanical about it. Rote memorization instead of muscle memory. Ilara found him there because she'd been looking. She'd made a point of learning the patterns of everyone on base. Who went where, when, why. Old habits that she couldn't quite break, even when she tried. "Corporal," she said quietly. Finn looked up, startled. He hadn't heard her approach. No one ever did. "Ma'am, I mean, He stumbled over the lack of rank to use. She wasn't an officer anymore, wasn't military at all, but the deference was hardwired. "Ilara's fine," she said. "You're here late." "Just maintenance, ma'am. I mean, Ilara." He went back to the rifle, hands moving automatically. Weapons don't clean themselves. She sat down across from him, not close enough to crowd, just close enough to talk without the television drowning them out. "You do this every night?" "Most nights." He didn't look up. "Helps me think." "What are you thinking about?" Finn's hands slowed, then stopped. He stared at the disassembled pieces of the weapon, like they held answers he couldn't find. "My dad," he said finally. "He was a Marine raider. Killed in action. Marja, Afghanistan, 2010. I was 8. Ilara knew this already. Had read his file the same way she'd read everyone's file, looking for the invisible wounds that medical charts never captured. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "Everyone says I look like him, act like him." Finn's voice was quiet, almost lost under the television static. "Everyone expects me to be like him. Die like him, maybe." "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want." He looked up at her finally, and she saw the fear there. The kind of fear that had nothing to do with cowardice and everything to do with being young and uncertain and carrying the weight of a legacy he never asked for. "Does that make me weak?" Ilara thought about all the times she'd wanted to be weak, wanted to lay down the burden of being strong, being capable, being the one who never hesitated when hesitation would have been human. "No," she said. "It makes you smart. Fear keeps you alive. It's when you stop being afraid that you start making mistakes." "Were you ever afraid?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to give him the easy answer, the lie that would comfort him. "All the time," she heard herself say instead. "Every single day." Finn studied her with new eyes, trying to reconcile the nervous rookie nurse with someone who admitted to fear so easily. "How do you deal with it?" Ilara stood up, suddenly needing distance from this conversation, from the honesty she hadn't meant to offer. "You don't deal with it," she said. "You just decide what you're more afraid of, dying or living with yourself after." She walked away before he could ask what that meant, leaving him alone with his clean rifle and his uncertain future. The storm hit full force at 2000 hours. Wind speeds climbed past 65 miles per hour, driving snow horizontal across the compound. Temperature dropped to 42 below zero, cold enough to kill exposed skin in minutes. The compound's exterior lights created halos of white static in the darkness, illuminating nothing, obscuring everything. Inside the command center, Webb watched weather reports scroll across outdated monitors. "Visibility's down to 20 meters, the duty officer reported. "Radio comms are degraded, satellites intermittent at best." "How long until it passes?" "Forecast says 72 hours minimum." Webb swore quietly. 3 days lockdown with no support, no backup, no way in or out. It was the kind of situation that made commanders nervous even when nothing was wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from the perimeter security station. "Motion sensors, East Sector. Multiple triggers." He pulled up the security camera feeds. Snow and darkness. Nothing visible. "Probably the storm," the duty officer said. "Wind setting off the sensors." Webb studied the pattern of alerts. East Sector. Triggered in sequence, 15-second intervals, moving from south to north along the fence line. "Wind doesn't move in straight lines," he muttered. "Sir?" Webb was already keying his radio. "All units, this is Master Chief. Increase alert status to Bravo. I want eyes on all entry points. Nobody goes outside alone. Copy, Master Chief. What's the threat? Don't know yet. Just a feeling. In the medical wing, Elara was checking inventory when the alert status changed. The lights dimmed briefly as the compound's power systems adjusted, routing more electricity to exterior sensors in security measures. Her hands stopped moving. She'd been in enough combat zones to recognize the feeling. The particular quality of air before violence arrived. The way silence felt different when it was about to be broken. She walked to the nearest window and stared out at the wall of white. Saw nothing. Felt everything. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. They're here. Her blood went cold. The number wasn't in her contacts, wasn't in any system she recognized, but she knew who it was from. The same way she knew what they meant. Elara deleted the text and walked quickly to the supply closet at the end of the east wing, the one that was supposed to be for maintenance equipment but was always locked. She pulled out the key she wasn't supposed to have and opened the door. Inside, behind stacked boxes of cleaning supplies, was a locked footlocker that didn't appear on any inventory list. She opened it with a combination she'd memorized the day she arrived. Inside was everything Elara Brennan, the nurse, didn't need. Everything Ghost, the operator, couldn't live without. Tactical vest, night vision optics, medical kit 3 times more advanced than anything in the hospital, and a rifle broken down into components, wrapped in oiled cloth. She stared at the contents for a long time. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything after. She could close the locker, go back to being a nurse, let the Marines handle whatever was coming. Or she could become the person she'd spent 4 years trying to stop being. Her hands were shaking when she reached for the rifle. The explosion came at 20:45 hours. A sharp crack that echoed across the compound despite the howling wind. The generator shed, 200 meters from the main building, erupted in flames that painted the snow orange and sent black smoke boiling into the white sky. Alarms shrieked. Marines scrambled for gear and positions, training overriding confusion. Fire team to generator shed, Webb barked into his radio. Medical, stand by for casualties. Security, lock down all. The second explosion cut him off. This one at the loading bay, blowing the reinforced doors inward with enough force to send steel fragments spinning through the hallway beyond. Then the shooting started. Suppressed weapons, professional cadence, the distinctive crack of rounds passing through the space where human beings had been standing seconds before. The first Marine to respond took 2 bullets to the chest. His body armor caught one. The other punched through the gap at his collar, severing the carotid artery. He went down hard, blood spreading across the tile in a pool that grew too fast to be survivable. The second Marine tried to drag him to cover. A bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him into the wall. He collapsed, screaming. The third Marine opened fire blindly into the smoke and chaos, emptying his magazine at targets he couldn't see. None of his rounds hit anything human. 8 men entered through the breached loading bay. They moved like they'd done this before, like they'd trained for exactly this scenario, in exactly this environment. White camouflage over tactical gear, faces covered, night vision optics giving them eyes where the Marines had only fear and confusion. They spread out with practiced efficiency, 2 securing the entry point, 3 moving to flank, 3 pushing deep into the hospital. The lead man spoke into his radio in Russian. First floor secured, proceeding to medical wing. In the triage area, Elara heard the gunfire and made her choice. She ran, not away, toward. Marines were dragging the wounded back from the loading bay, leaving trails of blood on polished floors. A corpsman was trying to stop the bleeding from the neck wound, hands slick with blood, face white with shock. "I need pressure here," he shouted. "Someone give me pressure." Elara dropped to her knees beside him, hands moving to the wound with speed and precision that made the corpsman blink in surprise. "Gauze," she snapped, "and get me a—" "We don't have—" "Bottom drawer," crash cart, red package. Her hands never stopped moving, finding the severed artery by touch, applying pressure with exactly the right amount of force. Move! The corpsman scrambled to follow orders from someone who wasn't supposed to be giving them. Ilara worked with hands that didn't shake, eyes that didn't flinch, voice that carried the calm authority of someone who'd done this 100 times under fire. She packed the wound, applied a pressure dressing, and checked the Marine's vitals in under 90 seconds. He's stable. Get him to OR1. Dr. Holt will need to repair the artery, but he's got time. The corpsman stared at her. How did you? Gunfire erupted closer. Bullets chewed through the wall above their heads, spraying drywall dust across the wounded. Ilara looked at the carnage around her. 4 Marines wounded in the first 30 seconds. More gunfire echoing from the east wing. Screaming from somewhere deeper in the building. They were going to die. All of them. Unless someone stopped what was coming. She closed her eyes and saw the faces of 11 children. Opened them and saw Marines who still had a chance. Made her choice. She stood up and ran toward the maintenance corridor, leaving the corpsman shouting questions behind her. The corridor was empty, dark, exactly as she'd memorized it 3 weeks ago when she'd walked every inch of this building, cataloging exits and entry points and places where someone could move unseen. She reached the locked supply closet in 40 seconds, had the door open in 5 more. The rifle came together in her hands with muscle memory that 4 years of nursing hadn't erased. Bolt carrier group, charging handle, magazine, each piece finding its place with mechanical certainty. She pulled tactical gear over her scrubs, clipped the vest, checked the optics. When she stood up, Ilara Brennan, the nurse, was gone. Ghost, the operator, stood in her place. The window on the second floor overlooked the compound's east approach. She'd chosen it weeks ago for exactly this scenario, a possibility she'd hoped would never come, but had prepared for anyway. Ghost went prone on the cold floor, rifle braced against the windowsill, eye to the scope. The storm was her ally now. Reduced visibility meant targets couldn't see her, meant they wouldn't expect long-range precision in these conditions, meant they'd left themselves exposed. Through the scope, the world resolved into thermal gradients and wind calculations. She watched the assault team's support element positioning themselves in the courtyard, providing overwatch for the men inside. 4 targets, 240 meters, wind 65 miles per hour from the northeast. Temperature -42 Fahrenheit, barometric pressure falling. Ghost's brain ran calculations faster than conscious thought. Lead target 4 feet. Adjust 2.8 mils left for wind. 1.2 mils up for cold barrel and altitude. Account for thermal shift in scope. Wait for the lull between gusts. Her finger rested on the trigger with pressure so light it registered as intention more than force. She exhaled half a breath and held it. The world narrowed to the crosshairs and the target and the space between heartbeats. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. Sound breaking over the storm like thunder. 240 meters away, the lead smuggler's head snapped back. He dropped into the snow and didn't move. Inside the hospital, Marines froze. "What the hell was that?" someone shouted. Ghost was already cycling the bolt, ejecting brass, chambering the next round. No time for confirmation, no time for doubt. The second target was moving now, scrambling for cover behind a vehicle. Ghost tracked him with hands that remembered every hour of training, every qualification shoot, every real-world mission where hesitation meant death. He made the mistake of pausing at the vehicle's rear quarter panel, thinking steel would protect him. Ghost put the round through the gap between tire and frame. It caught him center mass, punching through ribs and lung and out the other side. He collapsed behind the vehicle, out of sight, but not out of the fight. The third and fourth targets were professionals. They didn't run, didn't panic. They split, moving to opposite sides of the courtyard, using terrain and vehicles for cover, making themselves hard targets. Ghost waited. Patience was the sniper's weapon as much as the rifle. 10 seconds, 20, 30. There, Target 3 exposed himself for 2 seconds, moving between vehicles. It was enough. Ghost led him by 3 feet, accounting for his speed and direction, and fired. The bullet caught him between the shoulders as he ran. He went down hard, skidding face first into snow that turned red around him. The fourth target made the smart play. He went to ground completely, disappearing into terrain, refusing to give her a shot. Ghost smiled without humor. Smart, but not smart enough. She watched his last position for movement, for the tiny mistakes that fear always produced. Saw the snow shift slightly as he repositioned. Saw the barrel of his weapon extend past cover by 3 inches. A rookie error from someone who wasn't quite as professional as his dead teammates. She put a round through the scope of his rifle, sending fragments of glass and metal into his face. He reared back, exposing his torso. The second round ended him. Ghost cycled the bolt one more time, scanned for additional targets, found none. 4 shots, 4 down. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no regret, just the cold certainty of math converted to violence. Inside the hospital, Webb was on the radio. All units, we have friendly sniper support. Unknown position. Do not engage elevated sectors. Say again, friendly sniper, unknown position. Sir, who the hell is shooting for us? Webb looked at the security feeds showing the dead smugglers in the courtyard, then at the empty hallway where Alara Brennan should have been. I don't know, he lied, but they're keeping us alive. The remaining smugglers inside the hospital changed tactics. They'd lost their overwatch, lost the element of surprise, lost the advantage. Now they were hunting. Ghost abandoned the sniper position and moved through the building like she'd been born in its walls. Maintenance corridors, ventilation shafts, the spaces between spaces that blueprints never showed, and that she'd mapped with the thoroughness of someone who knew buildings, became battlefields. She heard them before she saw them. 2 men moving through the east wing, clearing rooms with professional precision. She dropped into the ventilation shaft above them and waited. The first man passed directly below her position. She could have taken him then, but the second man had an angle that would let him return fire. Patience. The second man moved forward, clearing his sector. Ghost dropped through the ceiling grate. She landed behind the first smuggler, knife already moving. One hand over his mouth to muffle sound, blade to the kidney, angled up to puncture the lung. He died without making a sound louder than a gasp. The second smuggler spun, weapon coming up. Ghost was faster. She'd always been faster. The knife left her hand, spinning once through the air, burying itself in his throat just above the body armor. He staggered backward, trying to scream through a ruined windpipe, hands clawing at the blade. Ghost retrieved her knife and finished it with professional efficiency. 2 more down. She heard footsteps running, Marines responding to the sound of the struggle. She was gone before they arrived, vanishing into the shadows like her call sign promised, leaving only bodies as evidence that something impossible had happened here. In the triage area, Corporal Finn Merrick was trying very hard not to throw up. He'd never seen someone die before. Not really. Not close enough to smell the blood and hear the last breath rattle out of ruined lungs. The first Marine was stable now, in surgery with Dr. Holt doing work that might save him. The second Marine was conscious, doped on morphine, staring at the ceiling with eyes that saw something other than acoustic tile. Finn was supposed to be helping, supposed to be doing something useful. Instead, he was frozen behind an overturned gurney, rifle in hands that shook so badly he couldn't have hit a target at 10 feet. He was a Marine, son of a Marine raider. He was supposed to be brave. All he felt was terror. The smuggler came around the corner without warning, weapon up, scanning for targets. He saw Finn, saw the fear, smiled. Finn tried to raise his rifle, tried to be his father's son. His hands wouldn't move. The smuggler's finger tightened on the trigger. Ghost appeared behind him like a nightmare made real. One hand grabbed his weapon, redirecting it up and away. The other hand drove the knife into the base of his skull, with surgical precision. He dropped without firing a shot. Ghost was moving before the body hit the ground, dragging Finn away from the corner, hands checking him for wounds with professional thoroughness. "Are you hit?" Finn stared at her, at the tactical gear, at the eyes that were nothing like the nervous nurse he'd talked to an hour ago. I froze. He was going to." "You're not hit." She pulled a tourniquet from her vest. "Give me your arm." "I'm not wounded." "Your shoulder, you're bleeding." Finn looked down, saw blood soaking through his uniform, felt the pain register for the first time, delayed shock finally releasing its hold. "I didn't even feel." Ghost applied the tourniquet with hands that moved too fast to follow, cinching it tight, checking the wound. "Through and through. You're lucky. Missed the bone." She pulled him behind better cover, propped him against the wall. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't shoot unless you're certain of your target." Finn grabbed her wrist as she turned to leave. His hand was shaking. His whole body was shaking. "Who are you?" Ghost looked at him with eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine, done things she couldn't forget. "Someone who should have stayed dead," she said. Then she was gone, leaving him alone with his fear and his father's ghost, and the knowledge that he'd frozen when it mattered. The hospital's PA system crackled to life with a screech of feedback, then a voice, accented, Russian, calm. "Ilara Brennan." Every Marine in the building froze. "Lieutenant, United States Navy, SEAL Team 3, Dam Neck, Virginia. Call sign, Ghost." In the triage area, Webb's face went white. "Syria, 2018. You shot me, left me burning in that compound while you escaped with your team." The voice paused, let the weight of revelation settle. "But I survived. Spent 2 years in hospitals, 2 more years tracking you. Found you hiding in Alaska, playing nurse, pretending to be something you're not." Ghost stood alone in a darkened hallway, listening to her past broadcast to everyone she tried to protect. "You can keep hiding, keep pretending, watch your Marines die one by one." The voice hardened. "Or you can face me, face what you are, what you've always been." Silence. Then, "A killer." The PA cut off, leaving only the sound of wind and alarms, and Marines trying to process what they just heard. Webb found her in the hallway outside triage. She was standing perfectly still, tactical gear covered in blood, rifle at low ready, face expressionless. "Lieutenant Brennan," he said quietly. She turned to face him. Didn't deny it, didn't run. "Is it true?" Webb asked. "SEAL Team 3? "Yes, Master Chief." "How long were you in?" 4 years, 2 deployments, 47 confirmed kills." Her voice was flat, professional, reporting facts that meant nothing and everything. "Medical discharge, 2020, PTSD, unfit for duty." Marines were gathering now, listening, staring at the rookie nurse who'd saved their lives while lying about everything. "Why'd you leave?" someone asked. Ghost's face cracked. "Just for a second. Just enough." "Kandahar Province, October 12, 2019. Al-Rashid School." She paused, forced herself to continue. "Intelligence said it was a weapons cache. High-value target. I called in the airstrike." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. 11 children died. Ages 6 to 11. Bad intel. Wrong target. The hallway was silent, except for alarms and distant gunfire. "They didn't court-martial me. The intelligence was official. The order was lawful. I followed protocol." She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "But that doesn't change what I did. Doesn't change that I see their faces every night. Doesn't change that I—" Her voice broke. She forced it steady again. "I became a nurse because I needed to save lives. As many as I could. Maybe enough to balance the scales." She looked at Webb. "It's never enough." The Russian voice came through the PA again. "Tell them the rest, Ghost. Tell them Kandahar wasn't an accident." Ghost's head snapped up. Tell them I fed that intelligence to your CIA. I wanted American forces to commit an atrocity, wanted to create an international incident, damage your credibility. The world tilted. Those children died because I wanted to break you specifically. Mission accomplished. Ghost staggered against the wall, the weight of it crushing her. Everything she'd done, every life she'd saved, every night she'd spent trying to earn redemption, it had all been orchestrated, weaponized, used to destroy her. So choose, Lieutenant Brennan. Keep hiding behind your nurse's uniform, or face me. Face what you really are. The PA crackled. You have 10 minutes to decide. After that, I start killing hostages, starting with the young corporal you saved. What was his name? Merrick? Ghost's eyes went to where Finn sat behind cover, wounded, terrified, trying to be brave. She looked at the Marines around her, some angry, some confused, some still grateful she'd saved them. She looked at her hands, covered in blood, same as they'd been in Kandahar. Master Chief Webb stepped forward, voice low enough that only she could hear. I know what you're thinking, that you deserve this, that those children's deaths are your fault and this is justice. Ghost didn't answer. Korea, 1991. I was a corpsman with 1st Marine Division. We took heavy fire from a compound we thought was clear. I called in artillery. Danger close. His voice was steady, but his eyes held old pain. 6 Marines died. Friendly fire. My call. My responsibility. He met her eyes. I carried that for years. Wanted to die. Thought I deserved to. He gestured at the wounded Marines being treated. But I didn't die. I kept serving, kept saving lives, kept trying to tip the scales back. He stepped closer. You want to surrender? To sacrifice yourself? That's the easy way. The hard way is living, fighting, saving these Marines who need you right now. Ghost's jaw clenched. I don't know if I can be that person again without becoming. Then don't be that person. Webb's voice was hard now, command voice. Be better. Be someone who fights to save instead of fighting to kill. He held out his hand. Can you do that, Lieutenant? Ghost looked at his hand for a long time, looked at the Marines watching her, looked at Finn, wounded because she'd hesitated to reveal herself sooner, made her choice. She took Webb's hand. Hoo-yah, Master Chief. Hoo-yah. Ghost turned to face the assembled Marines, took a breath. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of authority earned in blood. I'm Lieutenant Elara Brennan, former SEAL Team 3. I came here to hide from what I'd done, to pretend I could be something different. She met their eyes, one by one. I was wrong. You can't hide from what you are. You can only choose how you use it. She pulled back the charging handle on her rifle, checked the chamber. That man wants me to surrender, to give up, to prove that I'm broken. She looked at Webb, at Dr. Holt, who'd appeared at the edge of the crowd, at Finn, struggling to his feet despite his wound. But I'm not broken. I'm a SEAL. I'm a nurse. I'm someone who's made terrible mistakes and who's trying every day to do better. She moved toward the corridor, toward the fight waiting in the darkness. And I'm going to save every single one of you, even if it kills me. Webb fell in beside her. What's the plan, Lieutenant? Ghost's eyes were cold, calculating, the operator's mind running scenarios faster than fear could interfere. We're going to end this, my way. She disappeared into the shadows, and this time she wasn't running from what she'd been. She was running toward it. Behind her, Marines exchanged glances, some still uncertain, some ready to follow. Finn stood up, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. Where's she going? Webb watched Ghost vanish into darkness. To war, he said simply, and God help anyone in her way. The wind howled outside. The storm showed no sign of breaking, but inside Fort Glacier Medical Outpost, something else had been unleashed. Something that had been hiding for 4 years. Something that remembered exactly how to hunt. Ghost moved through the building with purpose now, No more hiding, no more pretending. The Russian smuggler wanted a war. He was about to learn what SEALs did to people who threatened their own. The hospital transformed into something else in the minutes after Ghost's revelation. No longer a place of healing, now a battlefield with fluorescent lights and linoleum floors slick with blood that smelled like copper in fear. Webb moved through the chaos with the calm of someone who'd done this before, who'd turned medical stations into defensive positions in Mogadishu, in Fallujah, in a dozen other places where the wounded needed protecting and the enemy didn't care about Geneva Conventions. All Marines, fall back to triage and establish defensive perimeter, he ordered into his radio. Overlapping fields of fire. No one moves alone. Wounded stay central. The responses came back ragged but disciplined. These were good Marines. Young, mostly. Scared, absolutely. But they'd trained for this, even if they'd never believed it would happen here, in Alaska, in what was supposed to be a quiet posting. Ghost listened to the radio traffic while checking her rifle. 30 rounds in the magazine, 2 more magazines on her vest. Not enough for a prolonged engagement, but enough to make a difference if she used them right. Dr. Holt appeared beside her, moving with surprising speed for a man his age. "How many are left?" he asked quietly. "Started with 8. I killed 4 outside, 2 inside." Ghost's voice was flat, clinical. "That leaves 2 plus their leader. 3 total." "You sure?" "I counted muzzle flashes during the initial breach. Different rates of fire, different positions. 8 signatures." She pulled back the charging handle, checked the chamber. Math doesn't lie. Holt studied her with the eyes of someone who'd seen combat turn nurses into soldiers, and soldiers into casualties. "The man on the PA, you really shot him in Syria?" "Center mass, 2 rounds, watched him go down in a burning building." Ghost's jaw tightened. "Should have confirmed the kill. Didn't. That was my mistake." "You were 24. Old enough to know better." Holt pulled a sidearm from inside his coat. A .45 caliber 1911, worn but well-maintained. The kind of weapon a man carried for 50 years because it had saved his life once, and he trusted it would again. "Korea taught me that mistakes are how we learn," he said. "Regret is how we grow, and guilt is how we know we still have a soul worth saving." Ghost looked at the old surgeon with new respect. "You going to fight, Doc?" "I'm going to protect my patients." Holt checked the magazine with practiced hands. "Whether that means surgery or shooting depends on what comes through those doors." Across the hospital, Finn Merrick sat against a wall, trying to remember how to breathe. The tourniquet on his shoulder was tight enough to hurt, which meant it was working, which meant he wasn't going to bleed out in the next few minutes. Small victories. A corpsman had tried to evacuate him to the surgical ward, but Finn had refused. Couldn't explain why, just knew that being away from the fighting felt worse than being in it. Another Marine, older, with sergeant's stripes and eyes that had seen Afghanistan, crouched beside him. "First time seeing combat?" Finn nodded, not trusting his voice. "You did good, kid. Didn't run. That's something." "I froze," Finn said. The words tasted like failure. "Someone was going to kill me, and I just froze." The sergeant glanced toward where Ghost had disappeared into the darkness. "But you didn't die." That nurse, the SEAL, whatever she is, she made sure of that. He handed Finn a fresh magazine. "So now you get a choice. Stay frozen, or learn from it." Finn took the magazine with hands that still shook. "My dad never froze. He was a raider. Your dad was human," the sergeant interrupted. "I don't care what stories you heard. Every man who's seen real combat has frozen at least once. The ones who say they haven't are liars or psychopaths." He stood up, checking his own weapon. "Your dad would be proud you're still breathing. Don't waste that gift trying to die like he did." The sergeant moved off to another position, leaving Finn alone with thoughts that weren't quite as dark as before. Ghost moved through the maintenance corridor with Finn's rifle scope still fresh in her memory. The way his hands shook, the terror in his eyes that was older than tonight, older than this fight. She'd seen that look before, in mirrors, in the eyes of SEALs who came back from deployments changed, in her own reflection after Kandahar, when sleep became impossible and waking became its own kind of nightmare. The maintenance corridor opened into the hospital's lower level. Service tunnels, storage rooms, the guts of the building that patients never saw. She'd walked every inch of it during her first week, mapping exits and choke points and places where someone could move unseen. Old habits from a life she'd tried to leave behind. The smugglers would use these passages. It's what she would do. Avoid the main corridors where Marines had established fields of fire. Move through the gaps in their coverage. Strike from unexpected angles. She found the first one in a storage room filled with hospital linens. He was good, patient, waiting in the darkness with night vision optics that turned shadows into advantage. His weapon was up, covering the door, finger resting light on the trigger. But Ghost was better. She came through the ventilation shaft above him, dropping into his blind spot with the silence that had earned her call sign. One hand clamped over his mouth before he could shout. The other drove her knife between his ribs, angling up to pierce the lung. He struggled for exactly 4 seconds before going limp. Ghost lowered him to the ground without sound, retrieved her knife, and moved on. 7 down. The hospital's PA system crackled again. The Russian's voice filled every corridor, every room, inescapable. Impressive, Ghost. You've killed 2 more of my men, but you can't kill what you can't find. Ghost kept moving, ignoring the voice, focusing on the hunt. I have something you want. Or someone, I should say. She stopped. The young corporal, Merrick, such a brave boy, trying so hard to be like his dead father. Ghost's hand tightened on her rifle. I have explosives placed in 3 locations. Patient wards, where your wounded Marines are being treated. The voice was calm, almost pleasant. You have 15 minutes before they detonate. Your choice, Ghost. Hunt me or save them. The PA cut off. Ghost stood frozen in the darkened corridor, mind racing through scenarios faster than her heartbeat. 15 minutes, 3 locations. She could maybe defuse one if she was fast and lucky. 2 was impossible. All 3 was fantasy, unless she ignored the bombs and focused on killing the Russian. If he died, maybe the detonation signal died with him. Maybe. Too many maybes. Too many variables. Too many lives hanging on calculations she couldn't complete. Her radio crackled. Webb's voice. Ghost, did you copy that transmission? Copy, Master Chief. What's your assessment? Ghost closed her eyes, ran the numbers again, hated the answer. I can't stop all 3 bombs. Even if I start now, even if I'm perfect, I can only reach 1, maybe 2 locations before detonation. Silence on the radio. The sound of a commander processing impossible math. What if we split up? Webb asked. Send teams to each location. Your Marines aren't trained for explosive ordnance disposal. If they make a mistake, they die anyway if we do nothing. Ghost leaned against the cold wall, feeling the weight of it crushing her. This was Kandahar again. Bad choices and worse outcomes. People dying because she had to choose who lived. Dr. Holt's voice cut through the radio chatter. I can defuse one. Webb responded immediately. Doc, you're not trained. Korea, 1952. Chinese forces left booby traps in everything. Buildings, bodies, medical supplies. I learned to defuse or we all died. Holt's voice was steady, certain. I'm 74 years old, Master Chief. I've had a good run. Let me do this. Ghost keyed her radio. Dr. Holt, modern explosives are different. Digital detonators, anti-tamper switches, redundant circuits. One wrong move. Then you'll talk me through it, Holt interrupted. I've got steady hands and nothing to lose. The math is simple, Lieutenant. I'm expendable. Those wounded Marines aren't. Ghost wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, Wanted to find some other solution that didn't involve a 74-year-old man risking his life because she'd failed to predict this scenario. But there was no other solution. "Master Chief," she said quietly. Webb's voice carried the weight of command decisions that never got easier. "Do it. Dr. Holt takes one location. Ghost, you take the second. I'll evacuate the third ward and hope we get lucky." "Copy." Ghost pulled up the hospital schematic in her mind. 3 patient wards, east, west, central. The Russian would have placed the largest bomb in the ward with the most casualties. "I'll take central ward," she said. "Doctor, Holt, take east. Master Chief, evacuate west and move everyone to the secure area." Acknowledgements came back. Ghost was already running. The central ward held 6 wounded Marines, 2 critical, 4 stable enough to move but not stable enough to survive an explosion. She found the bomb exactly where she would have placed it, beneath the primary medical station, hidden behind equipment cabinets, small enough to overlook but large enough to bring down the entire wing. Military-grade C4. Digital timer. 3 redundant detonators wired in parallel, so disabling one wouldn't stop the others. Professional work. 12 minutes on the clock. Ghost keyed her radio. "Dr. Holt, report. I've found it. Looks like something from a spy movie. Wires everywhere." "Describe what you see." Holt's voice was calm as he listed components. Circuit board, battery pack, detonator assemblies. Everything Ghost needed to build a mental picture. "Okay, Doc. First thing, do not touch the red wire." "Why?" "It's a tamper switch. You cut it, you die." "Good to know." Ghost worked on her own bomb while talking Holt through his. Her hands moved with the muscle memory of dam neck training. Countless hours in explosive ordnance courses that SEALs endured because knowing how to make bombs also meant knowing how to unmake them. "Find the battery lead," she instructed. "Should be yellow or black, connected to the main board." "Got it. Trace it to where it connects. You'll see a small clip, probably red plastic." "Yes, I see it. That's your primary power source. We're going to bypass it, drain the capacitors, make the detonators inert." 10 minutes. Ghost's own bomb was more complex. Whoever built it knew what they were doing. Every standard bypass had a countermeasure. Every obvious solution was a trap. She found the main capacitor and carefully discharged it using a wire stripped from her vest. Sparks flashed. The timer flickered, but didn't stop. Backup battery. Of course. "Ghost, I've disconnected the primary battery," Holt reported. "Timer's still running." "There's a backup. Look for a coin cell battery, probably CR2032, tucked into the circuit board." 8 minutes. Ghost located her own backup battery and carefully extracted it with hands that didn't shake, despite everything riding on the next 30 seconds. The timer stopped at 7 minutes, 41 seconds. She exhaled. "Doctor, Holt, status. Found the backup battery. Removing now." Ghost waited, each second stretching into infinity. "Timer stopped," Holt said finally. "We're clear. Confirm the detonators are disconnected from power." "Confirmed. No lights, no current, no boom." Ghost allowed herself 1 second of relief. "Good work, Doc. Thank you for not letting an old man die stupid." Webb's voice cut through. "West Ward evacuated. All wounded moved to secure location." "How much time?" Ghost checked her watch. 6 minutes on the remaining bomb." "Can you reach it?" She was already running, boots pounding through corridors, rifle slung, hands free for the sprint that might mean the difference between life and death. The West Ward was on the opposite side of the hospital. Full sprint, no obstacles. She could make it in 4 minutes. With obstacles, enemies, and the reality of a building under siege, 5 minutes if she was lucky. The Russian's voice came through the PA again. "You can't save them all, Ghost. You never could. Kandahar proved that." She ignored him, focusing on breathing, on speed, on the mental countdown that wouldn't stop. 5 minutes. She hit the stairwell at full speed, taking stairs 3 at a time, using the railings to swing around corners without losing momentum. 4 minutes. A smuggler appeared at the second-floor landing. He had just enough time to register surprise before Ghost shot him without breaking stride. The round took him in the chest. He fell backward. She jumped over his body and kept running. 3 minutes. The West Ward corridor stretched ahead. Empty. Too empty. Ghost slowed, instincts screaming. The Russian stepped out of a doorway 30 feet ahead, weapon raised. "Hello, Ghost." She dove sideways as he fired, rounds chewing through the space she'd occupied a heartbeat before. Rolled behind a gurney, came up with her rifle, returned fire. He was already moving, combat role behind a nursing station, professional and fast. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. "You're going to have to choose," he called out. "Kill me or save your Marines. Can't do both." Ghost's mind raced. She could suppress him, make a run for the bomb, but he'd shoot her in the back. Could rush him, try to end it fast, but that gave him time to detonate remotely if he had a trigger. Could negotiate, but SEALs didn't negotiate with terrorists. 2 minutes. She made her choice. Keyed her radio. "Master Chief, I need you in West Ward now. Bring the corpsman and anyone who can move fast." "What's the situation?" "I'm pinned down. The Russians between me and the bomb. I need a distraction." 1 minute, 30 seconds. Webb's response was immediate. "On our way." Ghost kept the Russians suppressed with careful shots, conserving ammunition, waiting for the window that might not come. 1 minute. She heard boots pounding down the corridor. Webb and 3 Marines, moving fast, weapons up. The Russian heard them too, shifted position to cover the new threat. Ghost moved. She broke from cover, sprinting for the ward entrance while the Russian was focused on Webb's team. Heard him shout, felt rounds crack past her head close enough to make her hair move. Kept running. 30 seconds. She found the bomb in the last place she looked, because it was hidden in the first place anyone should have checked. Taped to the underside of a hospital bed where a wounded Marine lay unconscious. 20 seconds. This bomb was different. Simpler. Just a timer and a detonator and enough C4 to turn the ward into a crater. No tamper switches, no backup batteries, just a single wire between the timer and the detonator. 15 seconds. Ghost pulled her knife, positioned it against the wire. This was the moment, the choice. Trust her training, trust her instincts, trust that the Russian hadn't anticipated this exact scenario. 10 seconds. She cut the wire. The timer stopped at 8 seconds. Ghost sagged against the bed, breathing hard, hands finally shaking now that the adrenaline had nowhere else to go. Outside, gunfire erupted as Webb's team engaged the Russian. She heard shouting, movement, the chaos of close-quarters battle. She forced herself to stand, to move, to remember that the fight wasn't over just because one bomb was defused. The corridor outside was a battlefield. 2 Marines down, wounded but alive. Webb behind cover, firing controlled pairs at a target Ghost couldn't see. She raised her rifle, found the Russian through her scope. He was retreating, moving fast, using the environment like he'd trained in buildings exactly like this one. Ghost tracked him, led him, squeezed. The round hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around but not dropping him. He disappeared around a corner, wounded but mobile. Ghost started to pursue, but Webb's voice stopped her. "Let him go, we've got wounded." She wanted to argue, wanted to finish it, wanted to end the threat permanently. But Webb was right. The mission was protecting the wounded, not revenge. She lowered her rifle and moved to help the casualties. Finn Merrick had followed Webb's team despite his own wound, despite orders to stay in triage. He'd seen the Russian, seen Ghost shoot him, seen the way she moved with precision that made combat look like choreography. Now he watched her kneel beside a wounded Marine and transform back into a nurse, checking vitals, applying pressure to wounds, barking medical orders with the same authority she'd use for tactical commands. 2 people in one body, soldier and healer, Killer and savior. He didn't know which one scared him more. Ghost worked quickly, efficiently, hands moving through triage protocols while her mind cataloged threats. The Russian was wounded, but not out of the fight. Still dangerous. Still hunting. And he knew exactly how to hurt her. Doctor Holt appeared, moving slower than before, hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline crash that followed defusing a bomb. "All wounded stable?" he asked. "Stable enough." Ghost finished bandaging a Marine's leg. "We need to consolidate, get everyone into a defensible position." Webb nodded. "Triage area. It's the most defensible space we have." "It's also predictable," Ghost countered. "The Russian will know we're gathering there." "So what do you suggest?" Ghost stood, wiped blood from her hands, thought like the operator she used to be. "We make him think we're in triage, but we're actually waiting in the corridors leading to it. Ambush positions. When he comes for us, we end it." Webb considered this. "You're using our wounded as bait." "I'm using terrain to our advantage. The wounded will actually be safer with overlapping fields of fire protecting them." "And if he doesn't take the bait?" Ghost's expression was cold. "Then I go hunting." They set up the ambush in 20 minutes. Wounded Marines moved to triage under heavy guard. Healthy Marines positioned in 3 separate corridors, each with clear sight lines, each supporting the others. Ghost took position in the maintenance corridor above, giving her a bird's-eye view of the entire kill zone. Finn insisted on being part of the ambush despite his wound. Webb tried to refuse, but the young Marine's face carried a determination that hadn't been there hours ago. "I froze once tonight, Master Chief. I won't freeze again." Webb looked at Ghost. She gave a small nod. "Put him in secondary position," she said. "Covering fire, not primary engagement." Finn took his position without argument, checking his rifle with hands that shook less than before. They waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. The hospital settled into an eerie quiet, broken only by wind and the occasional groan of stressed metal. Ghost remained motionless in her perch, breathing controlled, eyes scanning, mind running scenarios. The Russian would come. She was certain of it. Men like him didn't run. They adapted, regrouped, attacked from new angles. She'd been men like him. Before Kandahar, before guilt taught her that being good at killing didn't make it right. Her radio crackled. Webb's voice, barely a whisper. "Movement. East corridor. Single target. Moving slow." Ghost shifted position, brought her rifle to bear on the corridor Webb indicated. Saw nothing. "I don't have visual, Master Chief." "He's there. I can feel him." Ghost trusted Webb's instincts. 40 years of combat generated intuition that radar couldn't match. She waited. A shadow moved, so subtle she almost missed it. Just the suggestion of motion in darkness that should have been still. There, the Russian emerged from concealment with his weapon raised, moving with the careful precision of someone expecting an ambush. He was good, using mirrors to check corners, advancing in short bursts, keeping cover between himself and likely firing positions. But he made one mistake. He assumed Ghost would be at ground level. She took her shot from above. The round caught him in the upper chest, punching through body armor's weak point at the shoulder joint. He staggered, fell, weapon clattering away. Marines erupted from concealment, closing on his position with weapons trained. Ghost dropped from her perch, landing with bent knees, rifle up, approaching the downed Russian with the caution of someone who knew wounded animals were often the most dangerous. He was alive, breathing in ragged gasps, blood spreading across his tactical vest. She kicked his weapon away, checked him for additional threats, found a pistol and 2 knives that she removed with professional efficiency. Webb arrived, weapon trained on the Russian's head. "Secure?" "Secure." Ghost rolled him over. Behind the mask, a face ravaged by old burns. Scar tissue from the fire in Syria. Eyes that held recognition in something darker. "Ghost," he breathed. "You've improved. You made a mistake coming here." "Did I?" He coughed blood. I already won. You killed tonight. Became the operator again. Prove you can't escape what you are. Ghost's jaw tightened. I killed to protect. That's different. Is it? The Russian's smile was terrible. Tell yourself that. Tell yourself you're different from me. But we both know the truth. He reached for something inside his vest. 3 Marines opened fire simultaneously. The Russian's body jerked with the impacts, then went still. Ghost stood over him, looking down at the man who'd orchestrated everything, who'd fed false intelligence about Kandahar, who'd spent years planning revenge. Dead now, ended by the violence he'd brought. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no closure, just the hollow certainty that killing him changed nothing. The children were still dead. Kandahar still happened. Her guilt remained. Webb placed a hand on her shoulder. It's over, Lieutenant. Ghost shook her head slowly. No, Master Chief, this is over. But Kandahar, that's never over. She walked away from the body, from the Marines securing the area, from the battlefield that had been a hospital just hours before. Finn watched her go, saw the way her shoulders carried weight invisible to everyone else. He understood now why she'd left the SEALs, why she'd become a nurse, why she'd tried so hard to be someone different. She was trying to outrun ghosts that would never stop following. He stood up, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, and followed her. Found her in the supply room where this had all started. She was stripping off tactical gear, methodically returning each piece to the hidden locker. Ma'am? She didn't turn, just kept working, hands moving with mechanical precision. You should be in triage, Corporal. That shoulder needs proper treatment. So does yours. Ghost glanced at her own shoulder where the Russian's round had grazed her. She'd forgotten about it in the chaos. The wound was superficial, but bleeding. I'm fine. No, you're not. Ghost finally turned to face him. Saw something different in the young Marine. The fear was still there, but it sat alongside something harder now. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. What do you want, Finn? To understand. He stepped closer. You said killing to protect is different. Do you really believe that? Ghost was silent for a long moment. I don't know, she admitted finally. I killed 7 people tonight, maybe 8, depending on whether the Russians survived long enough to count. I can justify every single kill tactically. They were armed. They were threats. It was them or us. She looked at her hands. But that's what I told myself about Kandahar too. That the intelligence was good. That I was following orders. That I was protecting people. But this time it was true, Finn said. You did protect us. You saved 30 Marines. Did I? Or did I just prove the Russian was right? That I can't be anything except what I was trained to be? Finn thought about his father. About the stories of heroism and sacrifice. About the weight of trying to live up to someone else's legend. My dad died in combat, he said quietly. Everyone says he was fearless, that he never hesitated, that he was the perfect raider. He met Ghost's eyes. But I think they're lying, or they don't know the truth. Because tonight, I learned something. Real courage isn't not being afraid. It's being terrified and choosing to act anyway. Ghost, listen. You were afraid tonight, Finn continued. I saw it. When you had to choose between the bombs, when you faced that Russian, you were scared. Being scared isn't courage, Corporal. No, but choosing to save us instead of hiding, that's courage. Choosing to teach me instead of just killing that smuggler yourself, that's courage. He gestured at the tactical gear. Putting this on, even though it meant becoming someone you hate, that's the most courageous thing I've ever seen. Ghost turned away, unable to meet his eyes. You don't understand. The things I've done. You're right, I don't understand. I can't imagine what Kandahar was like, what carrying that guilt feels like. His voice softened. But I know what I saw tonight. I saw someone who could have run, could have stayed hidden, could have let us die. He touched her shoulder, making her face him. Instead, you fought. You saved us. You taught me that freezing doesn't mean failing, that being afraid is okay. His voice cracked slightly. You gave me something my dad never could. You gave me permission to be human. Ghost felt something break inside her chest. Some wall she'd built to keep the pain contained. I see their faces every night, she whispered. Those children. I hear them. I know. Finn's eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. And maybe you always will. Maybe that's the price. But tonight you saved 30 lives. That has to count for something. Ghost wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that the scales could balance. That redemption was possible. But she'd believed in things before that turned out to be lies. The door opened. Dr. Holt stood there, looking every one of his 74 years. Lieutenant, we need you in triage. More wounded than we have hands. Ghost wiped her eyes quickly, nodded, started to leave. Holt stopped her. That young man is right, you know, about courage, about what you did tonight. Doc, I defused one bomb tonight, Holt interrupted gently. You defused two, killed 7 enemies, saved 30 Marines, and you're still standing here questioning whether you did enough. He smiled sadly. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Warriors don't question themselves. Killers don't feel guilt. He tapped her chest, right above her heart. But healers, we carry every loss, remember every face, question every choice. He turned to leave, then paused. You're a healer who knows how to fight, Lieutenant, not a killer who learned medicine. Never forget the difference. Ghost stood alone in the supply room after they left, surrounded by the tools of violence she tried to leave behind. The tactical gear stared at her from the open locker. Rifle, vest, knife, tools that had saved 30 lives tonight, tools that had killed 11 children 4 years ago. Same hands, same skills, different outcomes. She closed the locker slowly, locked it, pocketed the key. Tomorrow she might throw it away, might seal that part of herself permanently. But tonight those tools had mattered, had made the difference between life and death. She walked to triage where wounded Marines needed care that only she could provide, where Dr. Holt was already working with hands that trembled from age and adrenaline, but never wavered when it mattered. Where Finn sat getting his shoulder properly dressed, talking to other Marines about what he'd seen, what Ghost had done, how she'd saved them. Webb saw her enter and nodded, a commander's acknowledgement. Permission to be both things at once, warrior and healer, Ghost and Alara. She washed her hands thoroughly, put on fresh gloves, moved to the first wounded Marine who needed attention. Her hands were steady as she worked, her voice calm as she gave instructions. But inside, in places no one could see, she was still counting. Still trying to balance scales that might never balance. Still trying to be better than what she'd been. Still trying to believe that trying was enough. Outside, the storm began to ease. Just slightly. Just enough to suggest that dawn might eventually come. Inside Fort Glacier Medical Outpost, Ghost worked through the night, saving the lives she could, mourning the ones she couldn't, carrying the weight of both, and wondering if that made her a warrior or a healer, or maybe, impossibly, both. Dawn came to Alaska the way it always did in winter, slowly, reluctantly, light bleeding through darkness like something wounded trying to survive. Ghost stood at the window of the surgical observation room, watching the sky turn from black to gray to the pale blue that meant the storm had finally broken. Her shoulder throbbed where the Russian's bullet had grazed her. Her hands ached from hours of surgery assistance. Her eyes burned from exhaustion that went deeper than one sleepless night. Behind her, Dr. Holt was closing the last incision on the Marine who'd taken rounds to the chest during the initial breach. The surgery had taken 6 hours, touch and go for most of it, but the young man would live. One more save to add to the count that Ghost couldn't stop keeping. That's the last critical case, Holt said, stripping off bloody gloves. The others are stable. We did good work tonight, Lieutenant. Ghost didn't turn from the window. 7 people died, Doc. 4 Marines. 3 smugglers I could have taken alive. The Marines died before you revealed yourself, and the smugglers died because they brought war to a hospital. Holt moved to stand beside her, looking out at the same pale light. You can't save everyone. Medicine taught me that. Combat confirmed it. Does it make it easier? No, it doesn't. They stood in silence, 2 people who'd spent the night elbow deep in blood, trying to hold back death with skills learned in different wars. The door opened. Webb entered, moving stiffly from the leg wound he'd taken during the firefight. He'd refused treatment until every other Marine was stable. Old Corps mentality. Officers ate last, got treated last, died last if it came to that. Medevac birds are inbound, he reported. Storm's clear enough for flight, 20 minutes out. Ghost nodded. The wounded would be evacuated to Anchorage. Proper hospitals, real trauma centers, places where combat surgery happened in sterile environments instead of jury-rigged ORs with ceiling tiles missing from explosion damage. There's something else, Webb continued. Navy JAG is on one of the helicopters. They'll want statements, investigations, the whole bureaucratic circus. Ghost's jaw tightened. She'd known this was coming. You couldn't kill 7 people on American soil without someone asking questions, even if those people were foreign combatants, even if it was justified, especially when the person doing the killing was supposed to be a nurse with a medical discharge for PTSD. Let them come, she said quietly. Webb studied her face. You know they'll try to bring you back. SEAL Command's going to want you reinstated. Hell, JSOC's probably already writing up recruitment packages. I know. And? Ghost turned to face him fully. I'm not going back, Master Chief. I can't be that person anymore. You were that person last night. You were damn good at it. That's the problem. Ghost's voice was heavy with something darker than fatigue. It's too easy. Becoming Ghost again. Using those skills. I spent 4 years trying to be someone different, and it took one firefight to erase all of it. Holt shook his head. You're wrong, Lieutenant. Ghost would have killed the Russian when she had the chance. Ghost wouldn't have defused bombs to save wounded. Ghost wouldn't have taught that young corporal that fear is human. Ghost would have finished the mission, Ghost countered. Ghost wouldn't have hesitated. Exactly, Holt said. You hesitated. You chose. That's not Ghost. That's Alara. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder outside. Multiple birds, coming in fast. Ghost walked to the window and watched them land. Black Hawks with Navy markings. The first one disgorged a team of medics who immediately began coordinating with the hospital staff. The second held people in different uniforms. Officers, investigators, the people who would decide what happened next. Among them, a woman in Navy dress blues, commander's stripes, Judge Advocate General Corps insignia. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent 20 years prosecuting cases and winning most of them. Ghost recognized the type, had testified in front of JAG boards before. They were fair, mostly, thorough, absolutely, and they didn't care about sob stories or PTSD or guilt that kept you awake at night. They cared about rules, protocols, whether your actions fell inside the lines that separated lawful from criminal. Commander Patricia Hayes, Webb said, following Ghost's gaze. She's got a reputation, hard but fair, decorated officer, lost her son in Afghanistan 8 years ago, sniper fire. Ghost absorbed this information. Hayes would understand combat, would understand loss, but that might make her harder, not easier. People who'd lost loved ones to war didn't always have sympathy for soldiers who questioned their own actions. The third helicopter was still landing when Finn appeared in the doorway, arm in a sling, face pale but determined. Ma'am, they're asking for you. I know, Corporal. They want to talk to all of us, everyone who was involved. He hesitated. What should we say? Ghost looked at the young Marine who'd frozen last night and found his courage, who'd made the shot that saved her life, who'd told her that being afraid was okay. Tell them the truth, Finn. That's all you can ever do. Even if the truth is complicated? Especially then. She walked past him, out of the observation room, into the corridor that was still scarred with bullet holes and bloodstains that no amount of cleaning had completely removed. Evidence of a battle that shouldn't have happened in a hospital in Alaska. Evidence that Ghost had been here. The triage area had been transformed into a command center. Marines stood at attention as Commander Hayes entered, her eyes taking in everything with the practiced assessment of someone trained to spot inconsistencies. Ghost stood with the other medical staff, still in surgical scrubs, still covered in the evidence of the night's work. Hayes's gaze found her immediately, held her with the weight of authority and evaluation. "Lieutenant Elara Brennan?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Commander Hayes, JAG. I'll need to speak with you privately." "Understood, ma'am." Hayes turned to Webb. "Master Chief, I'll need statements from all personnel involved in the incident. Priority to those who witnessed Lieutenant Brennan's actions." Webb nodded. "My Marines will cooperate fully, Commander." "I expect nothing less." Hayes gestured for Ghost to follow her. They walked to an empty office, Hayes closing the door behind them with a firmness that suggested this was going to be an interrogation, not a conversation. "Sit," Hayes ordered. Ghost sat. Hayes remained standing, a classic interrogation tactic meant to establish dominance. Ghost had used it herself during her SEAL career, knew all the tricks, knew that awareness wouldn't make them less effective. "Your file makes for interesting reading, Lieutenant." Hayes opened a tablet, scrolled through information. 4 years active duty, SEAL Team 3, 2 deployments, 47 confirmed kills. Multiple decorations including a Bronze Star with Valor device. She looked up. Then Kandahar, October 12, 2019. You called in an airstrike on coordinates provided by intelligence assets. 11 civilian casualties, all children. Ghost's hands tightened on the armrests. "The investigation cleared you of wrongdoing," Hayes continued. "Intelligence was deemed faulty, but from legitimate sources. You followed proper protocols. No charges filed." "The investigation was wrong," Ghost said quietly. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Russian I killed last night, Dmitry Volkov. He claimed responsibility for feeding false intelligence to CIA. He wanted to create an international incident, wanted American forces to commit an atrocity. You have proof of this claim?" "Only his confession, before your Marines killed him." Hayes made a note. "Convenient that the only witness is dead." "I didn't kill him, ma'am. Your Marines did. I would have taken him alive for interrogation." "Would you?" Hayes's voice was sharp. "Or would you have executed him for what he did to those children?" Ghost met her eyes. "I don't know, ma'am. Honestly, part of me wanted to. The part that's been carrying 11 faces in my head for 4 years. But you didn't. I shot him in the shoulder, disabling shot. He reached for something in his vest, and 3 Marines opened fire. I would have stopped them if I could have." Hayes studied her for a long moment. "Why did you leave the SEALs, Lieutenant?" "The official record says medical discharge for PTSD, but reading between the lines, I see a highly capable operator who chose to quit." Ghost was silent, organizing thoughts that had been chaos for 4 years. "I couldn't be that person anymore," she said finally. "The person who follows orders without question, who trusts intelligence without verification, who calls in airstrikes on schools because someone in an office 1,000 miles away says it's a legitimate target." "So you became a nurse." "I became someone who saves lives instead of taking them, or tried to." "How's that working out?" Hayes gestured at the hospital around them. 7 kills last night by my count, maybe 8. That's a significant body count for a nurse. They attacked a hospital, ma'am, killed 4 Marines, wounded a dozen more. They planted bombs in patient wards. I did what was necessary to protect. I'm not questioning the legality of your actions, Lieutenant. Hayes's voice softened slightly. I'm questioning your narrative. You say you left the SEALs to stop killing, but last night proves you're still exceptionally good at it. Ghost looked at her hands, saw blood under the nails that no amount of scrubbing had removed. I know, she whispered. That's what scares me. Hayes sat down finally, the interrogation shifting into something closer to conversation. I lost my son in Afghanistan, she said quietly. Corporal Marcus Hayes. Sniper got him during a patrol. He was 22. Ghost looked up, saw grief in the commander's eyes that mirrored her own. I'm sorry, ma'am. Everyone's sorry. Everyone says he died a hero, that his sacrifice meant something. Hayes's voice was bitter. But he's still dead. I still wake up expecting him to call, still set an extra place at Christmas. She leaned forward. I tell you this because I want you to understand something. Guilt doesn't make you noble, Lieutenant. It doesn't absolve you, and it sure as hell doesn't change the past. Then what does it do? It reminds you that you're human, that you care about the consequences of your actions, that you're not a sociopath who kills without conscience. Hayes's voice was firm. But guilt can also paralyze you, make you question every decision, turn you into someone who's so afraid of making another mistake that you can't function. Ghost thought about last night, the bombs, the choices, the impossible math of who lives and who dies. How do you live with it? She asked. The losses, the what-ifs, the knowledge that you could have done something different. Hayes smiled sadly. You don't live with it, you live through it. Day by day, choice by choice. You make the best decisions you can with the information you have. You accept that sometimes there are no good options. And you keep going because stopping means the guilt wins. She stood up, returned to her official demeanor. Here's what's going to happen, Lieutenant. I'm going to review all the evidence, interview witnesses, confirm that your actions last night were justified, and then I'm going to write a report that says Lieutenant Elara Brennan acted with exceptional courage and skill to protect American personnel from hostile forces, that her actions resulted in 30 lives saved and minimal casualties. Hayes paused. I'm also going to recommend that your medical discharge be upgraded to honorable, that all records of the Kandahar incident be reviewed in light of new intelligence regarding Russian manipulation, and that you be offered several options for your future. Ghost's throat tightened. Options? Reinstatement to active SEAL duty, assignment to JSOC for special operations, or continuation of your civilian nursing career with a clean record. What would you recommend, ma'am? Hayes looked at her for a long time. I'd recommend you choose the option that lets you sleep at night, because that's the only metric that matters in the end. She walked to the door, opened it. You have 48 hours before I need your decision. Use them wisely, Lieutenant. Hayes left. Ghost sat alone in the office, surrounded by the weight of choices that would define the rest of her life. The next 24 hours blurred into a chaos of statements and debriefings and medical evacuations. Ghost worked through it mechanically, doing what was required, saying what was necessary, avoiding the central question that everyone wanted to ask. Are you coming back? The wounded Marines were transported to Anchorage in waves. The critical cases first, then the stable ones, finally the walking wounded who'd insisted on staying until the last moment. Finn was in the final group. He found Ghost in the supply room, the same place where this had all started. They're loading the last helicopter, he said. I know. I wanted to thank you before I left. Ghost looked at him, saw the young Marine who'd frozen transformed into someone harder, older, marked by combat in ways that would never fully heal. You don't thank people for doing their job, Corporal. Is that what last night was? Your job? Ghost thought about that, about the line between duty and choice, between following orders and making decisions. I don't know anymore, she admitted. Finn stepped closer. I applied to become a Navy corpsman, put in the paperwork this morning. Ghost's eyes widened. Finn, you said my dad would be proud if I lived my own life, not his. Finn's voice was steady. This is my life, helping people, saving lives, maybe fighting when I have to. He met her eyes. You showed me that's possible, to be both things, healer and warrior. Ghost felt something crack in her chest, some wall she'd built between who she'd been and who she wanted to be. Being both is harder than being either one, she said quietly. I know. That's why I need someone to teach me. Finn, I can't. I'm not asking you to be my instructor. I'm asking you to show me it's possible. That someone can carry what you carry and still get up every morning and try. Ghost looked at this young man who'd frozen in fear and found his courage, who'd listened when she said being afraid was okay, who was choosing to walk the same impossible path she'd been stumbling down for 4 years. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay. Finn smiled. First genuine smile she'd seen from him. Hoo-yah, ma'am. Hoo-yah, Corporal. He left for the helicopter. Ghost watched him go, watched the Black Hawk lift off into the pale Arctic sky, carrying wounded Marines and one young man who decided to become a healer who could fight. She wondered if she'd done him a favor or cursed him. Dr. Holt found her at the window an hour later. Last helicopter's gone, he said. Just us and Master Chief now. And the cleanup crew coming tomorrow. How long until this place is operational again? Weeks, maybe months. They'll probably rebuild the damaged sections, upgrade security. Holt sat down heavily, age catching up with him. I've been practicing medicine for 50 years. This is the first time I've had to fight in a hospital. I'm sorry you had to. Don't be. I made my choices, same as you. He looked at her. What will you choose, Lieutenant, when Commander Hayes asks? Ghost was silent for a long time. I don't know if I can go back to the SEALs. Be Ghost again. Trust the intelligence. Follow the orders. Not after Kandahar. And nursing? I don't know if I can be just a nurse either. Not after last night. Knowing that if something happens, if people need someone who can fight. She stopped, started again. How do you choose between saving lives with medicine and saving lives with violence? Holt smiled. Who says you have to choose? Everyone. The Navy, society, the neat little boxes that say you're either a warrior or a healer. And yet last night you were both. Diffused bombs, killed enemies, performed triage, taught a young man courage. Holt's voice was gentle. Maybe the question isn't which one you choose. Maybe it's how you integrate them. Ghost thought about that. About the tactical gear hidden in a locker. About the skills that had saved 30 Marines. About the hands that had killed and healed in the same night. I'm not sure that's possible. Neither was I, after Korea. Holt stood up slowly. But I spent 50 years proving it was. Combat medic to surgeon. Warrior to healer. Both to neither, to both again. He walked to the door, paused. The choice isn't between Ghost and Alara, Lieutenant. It's whether you let them destroy each other or make peace. He left her alone with that thought. Webb found her at sunset. The sky was on fire with colors that Alaska did better than anywhere else. Orange and pink and purple bleeding across the horizon like the world was healing from a wound. Got a minute, Lieutenant? Always, Master Chief. Webb handed her a cup of coffee. It was terrible. Hospital coffee always was. But it was warm and familiar, and after the night they'd had, it tasted like survival. Commander Hayes sent her preliminary report, Webb said. All clear, justified use of force, exceptional conduct under fire. She's recommending you for a Navy Commendation Medal. Ghost laughed bitterly. Another medal, just what I need. It's recognition, Lieutenant, for what you did. 30 Marines are alive because of you. 4 Marines are dead, maybe because I didn't reveal myself sooner. Webb's voice hardened. Those Marines died in the first 30 seconds, before anyone knew what was happening, before you could have done anything. You don't get to claim responsibility for that. Don't I? If I'd been honest from the start, if I'd set up proper security protocols, if I'd... If, Webb cut her off. You can play that game forever, Lieutenant. I know. I've been playing it for 30 years. Every Marine I couldn't save, every call I got wrong, every decision that cost lives. He sat down beside her. But here's what I learned. The only way forward is to accept that you did your best with what you had, that some people die no matter what you do, and that the ones who lived deserve your focus more than the ones who didn't. Ghost stared at her coffee, saw her reflection in the dark surface. How do you sleep at night, Master Chief, with all those ghosts? I don't, most nights. But when I do, I remind myself of something. Webb's voice was quiet. I didn't kill those 6 Marines in Korea. Bad intelligence and fog of war killed them. I just happened to be the one holding the radio. He looked at her. Same as you in Kandahar. You didn't kill those children. Russian intelligence manipulation and failed CIA vetting killed them. You were the instrument, not the cause. Instruments can choose not to fire. Can they? When you're 24 years old and everyone's telling you the target is legitimate, when you're trained to trust the chain of command, when hesitation might cost American lives? Webb shook his head. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. It was wrong, tragically wrong, but it wasn't criminal, wasn't evil, it was war. Ghost felt tears burning behind her eyes. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you have a conscience, because you care, because you're not a sociopath. Webb's voice gentled. That pain means you're still human, Lieutenant. Don't wish it away. It's what makes you someone worth saving. They sat in silence, watching the sunset paint the Alaskan wilderness in colors that didn't care about guilt or redemption or choices that haunted. What will you do, Webb asked finally, when Hayes gives you the options? Ghost thought about Finn, heading to corpsman school, about Dr. Hope, 50 years balancing warrior and healer, about the Marines she'd saved and the children she couldn't. I'm going to stay, she said quietly. Webb raised an eyebrow. Stay where? Here, Fort Glacier, as a nurse. She looked at him. But not hiding anymore, not pretending I'm just one thing. I'm Alara Brennan, former SEAL, current nurse. Both things, neither apologizing for the other. The Navy might not let you stay civilian. They're going to want Ghost back. Then they'll be disappointed. Ghost's voice was firm. I'm not Ghost anymore. I'm not sure I ever really was. Ghost was a call sign, a role, something I played because that's what SEALs did. She stood up, looking out at the wilderness that had almost killed them and somehow made her stronger. But Alara? Ilara's real. Complicated, broken in places, trying to heal, scared of what she's capable of, and trying anyway. Webb smiled. That sounds like someone worth knowing. That sounds like someone who's going to need a good Master Chief to keep her honest. I think that can be arranged. Commander Hayes returned 2 days later. The hospital was mostly cleaned up by then. The bodies gone, the blood scrubbed away, evidence cataloged and removed. All that remained were scars in the walls and memories in the people who'd been there. Hayes found Ghost in the same supply room where she'd first revealed herself. The tactical gear was back in the locker, locked, but the key remained in Ghost's pocket, just in case. Lieutenant Brennan, Hayes said formally, I've completed my investigation. And you're cleared of any wrongdoing. Your actions were justified, proportional, and in line with self-defense protocols. Hayes handed her a tablet. I'm also pleased to inform you that the Kandahar investigation has been reopened based on new intelligence regarding Russian intelligence manipulation. Ghost's breath caught. What does that mean? It means the official record will reflect that you acted on faulty intelligence provided by hostile foreign actors, that the civilian casualties were the result of enemy action, not American negligence. Hayes paused. It doesn't change what happened. Those children are still dead. But it does change the responsibility, and it might help you sleep better at night. Ghost thought about that, about official records and truth, about whether words on paper could absolve guilt that lived in the chest like shrapnel. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. Thank the Russian for confessing before he died. And thank Master Chief Webb for his detailed statement about what was said. Hayes pulled out a second tablet. Now, your options. I've been authorized to offer you the following. She read from the screen. Option 1, full reinstatement to active duty, SEAL Team 3. All charges cleared, rank restored. You'd report to Dam Neck within 30 days. Ghost shook her head before Hayes finished. No, ma'am. You're certain? SEAL Command specifically requested you. They need experienced operators. You'd be welcome back. I'm certain, Hayes nodded. Option 2, assignment to JSOC for Special Operations Liaison work. Hybrid role. Some training, some operational planning, less direct combat, more strategic. Still military, still taking orders, still trusting intelligence I can't verify. Fair point. Hayes scrolled down. Option 3, honorable discharge, clean record, VA benefits, complete separation from service. And then what? I go back to being just a nurse? Is that not enough? Ghost thought about last night, about the bombs, about teaching Finn, about the moment she'd chosen to defuse instead of hunt. I don't think I can be just anything anymore, ma'am. I'm not just a SEAL. I'm not just a nurse. I'm someone who's both and neither, and trying to figure out what that means. Hayes closed the tablet. Then I'm going to offer you option 4, unofficial, off the books. Ghost's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. You stay here, Fort Glacier, as a civilian contractor, nurse position, standard pay and benefits. That's option 3. Not quite. Hayes leaned forward. Option 4 includes a designation as emergency reserve operator. If this facility is attacked again, if American personnel are in danger, if the situation requires someone with your particular skill set, you want me to be Ghost again? I want you to be whoever you need to be to protect American lives. Nurse first. Operator only when necessary. Ghost studied Hayes' face. Saw something there beyond official duty. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of someone else who'd tried to fit into neat categories and failed. Why? Ghost asked. Why create this option for me? Hayes was quiet for a moment. Because I lost my son to a war he believed in. But I've read enough reports, seen enough cases, to know that the best warriors are often the ones who question what they're fighting for, who carry the weight of their choices, who try to be better. She met Ghost's eyes. You're not a killer, Lieutenant. You're a protector who's exceptionally good at violence when protection requires it. The military needs people like you. But more than that, the people you protect need you exactly as you are. Ghost felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, not absolution, but maybe acceptance. I'll take option 4, ma'am. Hayes smiled. Good. I'll process the paperwork. You'll officially be a civilian as of 0800 tomorrow, but you'll maintain security clearance and crisis authorization. She stood to leave, paused. One more thing, Lieutenant. The medal. The Navy Commendation. Will you accept it? Ghost thought about medals, about the Bronze Star she'd earned in Syria, about the decorations that sat in a box somewhere, gathering dust, meaning everything and nothing. Only if it reads, Ilara Brennan, nurse. Not lieutenant, not SEAL, just who I am now. Hayes nodded. I'll make sure it does. 6 months later, Fort Glacier Medical Outpost looked almost normal. The damaged sections had been rebuilt, new security systems installed, additional Marines assigned. The hospital that had almost died now stood stronger than before. Ghost walked the same corridors she'd walked that night, but they felt different now. Not haunted, just marked. Evidence of survival etched into walls that would never be completely smooth again. She'd settled into a routine, day shifts mostly, surgery when needed. Teaching the new nurses who cycled through, some of whom had heard stories about what happened, and looked at her with a mix of awe and uncertainty. She didn't hide who she'd been, didn't advertise it either, just existed as both things simultaneously. Nurse Brennan, who could intubate in her sleep. Former SEAL who ran the perimeter every morning at 0500. The tactical gear remained in the locked supply room. She checked it weekly, kept it maintained, hoped she'd never need it again, knew she probably would. A new nurse arrived in December, young, nervous, clearly running from something. Ghost recognized the signs immediately, had warned them herself not long ago. She approached the young woman during lunch. "First posting?" The nurse jumped slightly. "Yes, ma'am. Yes, sorry." "Don't apologize. Alaska takes getting used to." "It's not Alaska I'm worried about." Ghost sat down across from her. "What is it then?" The nurse hesitated, then, quietly, "I made a mistake. Back stateside, a patient died because I didn't catch something I should have caught. Review board cleared me, but you still see their face." The nurse looked up, surprised. "Yes, how did you?" "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, same guilt." They sat in silence for a moment. "Does it get easier?" the nurse asked. Ghost thought about the question, about the 11 faces she still saw every night, about the 30 Marines who were alive because she'd fought, about the impossible math that never quite balanced. "No," she said honestly, "but you get stronger, and eventually, strong enough is enough." The nurse nodded slowly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not lying, for not saying it'll all be okay." Ghost smiled sadly. "It might not be okay, but you'll survive it, and that's something." She left the nurse to her thoughts and walked outside. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in those impossible colors. Webb found her there, as he often did. "Got word from Anchorage," he said. "Corporal Merrick completed corpsman training, top of his class. He's asking if there's an opening here." Ghost felt warmth spread through her chest. "Is there? For someone you trained? I'll make an opening." "I didn't train him, Master Chief. I just showed him it was okay to be scared. Same thing, sometimes." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. "Any regrets?" Webb asked. "About staying? About choosing this instead of going back?" Ghost thought about that. About the SEALs she'd left behind. About the missions she wasn't running. About the life she could have had if she'd chosen differently. "Every day," she admitted, "but fewer than I'd have if I'd left." Webb nodded. "That's all any of us can hope for." Ghost's phone buzzed. A message from Commander Hayes. "Possible situation developing. Stand by for briefing." She showed it to Webb. He read it without expression. "You don't have to respond," he said. "Option 4 doesn't mean you're on call 24/7. Ghost looked at the message, thought about the tactical gear in the locked room, about the skills she tried to leave behind, about the people who might need someone who could be both healer and warrior. She typed back, "Standing by," sent it before she could second-guess herself. "What if it's another Kandahar?" she asked quietly. "What if I trust the intelligence and it's wrong and people die?" Webb's voice was steady. "Then you'll carry that too, same as you carry everything else. But you'll carry it as someone who was trying to do right, someone who questioned, someone who gave a damn." He put a hand on her shoulder. "That's all any of us can do, Lieutenant. Our best, with what we have, knowing it might not be enough, trying anyway." Ghost looked at the sky, at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening blue, thought about the path she'd chosen, the weight she'd accepted, the person she was becoming. Not Ghost, not entirely Alara, something in between, something new, someone who'd killed 47 people and saved hundreds more, who carried 11 faces and 30 victories, who woke up every morning and chose to try again despite the odds, despite the guilt, despite everything. Someone who was learning that redemption wasn't a destination you reached. It was a direction you pointed yourself and kept walking, even when the path disappeared. She pulled out her key, the one to the supply room, the one she'd kept despite every impulse to throw it away, held it up to the fading light. "I should probably get rid of this," she said. "Probably," Webb agreed. "Will you?" Ghost thought about Finn, coming back as a corpsman, about the new nurse, trying to outrun her own ghosts, about the inevitable moment when protection required violence and healing required the willingness to fight. She put the key back in her pocket. "Not today. Maybe tomorrow? Maybe. Or maybe I'll accept that this," she gestured at herself, at the hospital, at the impossible contradiction of who she was, "is just who I am now. Nurse who can fight, operator who saves lives. Someone who's both and neither in trying to make peace with that." Webb smiled. "Sounds like progress to me. Sounds like survival. Same thing, sometimes." The stars came out fully now, brilliant in the Alaskan darkness. The same stars that had watched over Syria, over Kandahar, over 1,000 battlefields where people had fought and died and tried to find meaning in the violence. Ghost stood beneath them, feeling small and broken, and somehow still standing. Still trying. Still choosing to be better than what she'd been. Still counting saves instead of kills, even when the math would never balance. Her phone buzzed again. Hayes's briefing coming through. Details of a situation that might need someone with Ghost's particular skills. She read it, considered it, made her choice. Sent back. "If they need me, I'll be ready." Then she walked back inside, past the scars in the walls, past the supply room with its locked secrets, past the memories that would never completely fade, back to the nurse's station where wounded people needed care, back to the life she'd chosen, back to being Ilara Brennan, former SEAL, current nurse, forever trying to save enough lives to balance scales that might never balance. But trying anyway, because trying was all anyone could do. And sometimes, impossibly, trying was enough. The wind picked up outside, carrying snow across the frozen landscape. Inside Fort Glacier Medical Outpost, lights glowed warm against the darkness. And in the supply room, a locked footlocker waited, just in case, because some skills couldn't be unlearned. Some identities couldn't be fully abandoned. Some people were meant to be both things at once, healer and warrior, nurse and operator, Ilara and ghost. Not one or the other, both, always both. And maybe, finally, that was okay.